Hello, Jeanne Martin.
Hi everybody at home.
And Frank Dello Stritto, and we're discussing Hitchcock.
Yes, tomorrow's film is Stage Fright, 1950. And it occurred to me when you told me about this movie that you show a lot of movies from the late 40s and early 50s. And the reason they're in the public domain is that, you know, the old system in Hollywood was collapsing, a new system hadn't been built up yet.
Really?
And the big studios didn't call the shots anymore, or pretty soon they wouldn't anymore. The world was changing. And Hitchcock had done it in Hollywood for all of the 1940s, and after the war, late in the 40s, he went back to England to make some movies because you could get financing there, and it was much cheaper to make movies there. But it was kind of a quiet period for him. He made his classics in the 30s, 39 Steps, and then the 40s with Rebecca and Lifeboat, and my favorite Hitchcock film is Notorious, 1946. And then he really kind of falls off the radar for a couple of years, but he's still making movies. But I don't think he's figured out how to exist in the new system yet. And one of those movies is Stage Fright. Now, I'm not going to tell you anything about the plot for two reasons. One is it's not a complicated plot when you watch it, but when you try to explain it to somebody, you're tripping over yourself. This guy went here, that guy did this. You know, nobody can make any sense of it. But it's not that way. The movie is quite easy to follow. And the second reason it's hard for me to talk about the movie without giving away something that is a true mystery. So, nothing on the plot. It involves a murder, and it involves a whodunit. And typical of Hitchcock, almost all of his movies have someone who's accused of a crime they haven't committed, and how are they going to get out of it? That's the central theme of his. That's the theme of his movies. The recurring plot element is the innocently accused person. And the neat thing about this movie is you start having doubts real early whether this person is really innocent or not. Most of the Hitchcock movies, the innocent is known to be innocent, and you're rooting for him. This one is a darker film in that sense. But when you mention the Hitchcock canon, you don't often hear Stage Fright mentioned.
And why is that?
It is, he when you make similar plots for 30 years, the best ones kind of overshadow the other ones. There are things different about this. There's a real tension between the two leading actresses, Marlene Dietrich and Jane Wyman, who apparently did not get along on the set, but they didn't get along. They didn't care for much of each other. And Marlene Dietrich later on, I don't know if it was I don't know if she wrote an autobiography, but a biography of her by her daughter, I think, basically said she didn't care for Jane Wyman, and you can pick up a little of that when you watch this.
Well, when you watch Myra Breckinridge, and you know that Raquel Welch and Mae West, two, sex symbols, if you will, but Mae in her 80s at that point, off screen it said that they really were like two cats fighting. But on screen, the chemistry between them is amazing. How did Jane and Dietrich fare on this, Wyman?
I think it fared fine. Now, they don't really have that, most of the time Jane Wyman's character is deceiving Marlene Dietrich's character, and that works.
Okay. Because they hate each other.
What like pure hatred to make a screen come to life.
Good old-fashioned hatred. How refreshing. The Klingon to Captain Kirk.
Anyway, but this is a good movie, but Hitchcock really hits his stride again shortly after this with Strangers on a Train, and then really hits it a couple of years later, 1954, with Dial M for Murder, and that starts the procession of his classic late 1950s film.
I'm sorry, Frank, but if I had produced a movie with Marlene Dietrich and Jane Wyman, it would be the high point of my career. And you're basically saying this guy's hitting his stride with other films. I mean, he's an amazing man, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he was,
and I met him.
You met him?
Yep.
I met him. God bless you.
Did you know that I met him?
I did not. You must have been a child.
I was about 18. I have photographic evidence. I published a little magazine called Var Ulven, Norwegian for werewolf. So he was at the old SAC 57, which was where the famous Coconut Grove fire was. Okay? And there's a plaque there on the street, Coconut Grove Fire. So you go up about another 100 feet, actually, take a left, and there was the SAC 57 Theater, which is now another hotel. And Hitchcock was there for Frenzy. So it had to be 72?
Frenzy is 72, that's right.
So I was 18 years old. And I got photos of him, and I remember to this day, because it's Alfred Hitchcock, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a baby, and he goes, "We must put a wig on the baby's head." Then he autographs for me, which is his profile, and I have that in the magazine, and the photos I took of the cake, and Hitchcock, and probably the baby. "We
Wow.
must put a wig on the baby's head." He just looks up from his autographs, and then goes back to autographing.
He was a strange man.
He was great, but that's my encounter with Alfred. I photographed Alfred Hitchcock, Frank.
Okay,
Wow.
well, I've seen some of his movies. That's the closest I can get.
Me too. But I have seen him interviewed, and he is kind of a strange guy.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
he's very strange.
Yeah.
Have you ever met Billy Mumy, the child actor, who's no longer a child, but he was a child actor in the 50s and 60s?
And what was he in the Munsters?
No, that's Eddie Munster. That's Butch Patrick.
Oh yeah, Butch Patrick we've interviewed, but we haven't got Billy Mumy yet on Visual Radio.
Well, if you ever get him on, you ask him about Alfred Hitchcock, because he was a child star. He was like, less than 10. And he was making an Alfred Hitchcock Presents, or an Alfred Hitchcock show mystery, half-hour show. And being a kid, he wasn't exactly the disciplined actor that Hitchcock wanted. And Hitchcock went up to him and said, "If you don't stand in your spot, I will nail your feet to the floor until the blood runs like milk." And Billy Mumy tells the story of how terrified he was at that, but that's the effect Hitchcock wanted.
Yeah,
So he was a bit of a strange man, I guess.
and
Well,
he didn't like to work with actors. In one of the interviews, they said.
Well, no, he wanted as far as Janet Leigh goes, right? And he wanted to have an affair with her, I think.
Well, there's the stories. He had this weakness for young blondes, and I guess the one you have to get on is Tippi Hedren, who was in Marnie and the Birds, and she tells, well, as much as she's a rather discreet woman, but she tells this guy had problems with her, and that's why she basically turned her back on him.
But didn't he blacklist Janet Leigh, Janet Leigh? Psycho, right?
I don't know that story.
One of them was allegedly blacklisted by Alfred Hitchcock. He was a married man, and he had, like you said, the penchant for young blondes.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to trash the guy. I don't know the whole story.
I met him. I love him.
Tippi Hedren had problems with him, and after her second film with him, Marnie, she kind of drops off the map. Now, she might have only been on the map because he liked putting her in movies. I mean, she was, I don't think she was any great talent, but she
wasn't bad, though.
Had her fallout with him.
She wasn't a bad actress. I thought that in The Birds, at least, she was believable.
Oh, the Birds was scary.
It's easy to give a good performance if the movie is built around you. I mean, the director works for you and all that. The people I admire are the character actors who are basically called in for a day or two.
Yep.
And somehow carve out great performances in nothing that they have any creative control over. They handed a script and they're expected to say their lines.
Yeah, it's like grace under pressure.
Yes, and whether I'm, like a lot of these, like Seinfeld is one of my favorite shows of all time. And one of the reasons it's the favorite is there's actors come in, and a lot of them are stand-up comedians who aren't really actors, and they come in and they create these characters, and it's one thing doing it in a movie, but usually a TV show is filmed in a matter of a couple of days, and they don't have any time to develop anything. They have to do it all themselves. And I'm a big Bela Lugosi fan, and he'd walk into these sets, and there was nothing for him to work with, and somehow he usually carved out a performance you couldn't forget. So I admire that. And actually, there's one of those actors in this movie, Alastair Sim, who is one of the grand old British actors. And when he had a starring role, he could really chew it alive. And he's very effective in this movie. And he's the kind of guy who's, when he stared at you, you knew it.
When Jeannie stares at you, you know it. She was in the military. You got great. She's got psychologist eyes.
Well, as I tell you, Joe, I never watch your show because the one time I did, I thought I sounded like an idiot, and I'm too self-conscious for the next couple of shows, and those were my worst shows with you. So now I don't pay attention to it. So
now Anthony, who programs our movies, thinks you're great. So he just thinks you're terrific.
Yeah, but believe me, if I watch the show every week, or if I watch what you post on YouTube, and first of all, let me thank you for all the YouTube credits I have. 99% of them are your show.
No, but what's great is
it's to them, I'd say, nope, I can't do that. And I either change or I wouldn't do it. So I appreciate Anthony's fandom, but I'm not going to watch myself.
It's a great library, Frank. Hundreds of years from now, people will be listening to Frank Dello Stritto. I bet you will hit tens of millions of hits, but it will be 200 years from now.
Yes,
But they're going to go like, wow, this is great.
Frank, I
But
love...
when word gets out that you met Alfred Hitchcock, there'll be a religion founded in your honor.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, Frank, I love the movies of the 30s and the 40s. That time period is unbelievable. I mean, the topics I watch TCM?
Movie channel,
TCM.
TMC.
Yeah, not AMC, because that's
TMC,
different. Yeah,
movie channel, Ted
oh,
Turner,
it's
right?
unbelievable. They show all the 30s and 40s movies. They're
Because he
phenomenal.
owns them, right, Frank?
I don't know if he owns every movie he shows. In fact, I know he doesn't own every movie he shows, but he bought the MGM library, so he had as much of the MGM library he could buy, and I know he has control over those. When he shows a Universal horror movie, I don't think he has any ownership in them. I think they're just leasing a film the same as you and I would.
Oh, good,
Yes,
okay.
he owns a lot of movies, and that's his staple. When he has a Halloween special or a holiday special, they show a lot of movies that he doesn't own. It's a great station, and I love Robert Osborne. And
Yes, I love him too. And
quite frankly, on a weeknight when I get home, I know I'm not going to last through a whole movie, but I'll tune in to hear his introductions, and I always learn something. And I always keep an eye on him, because when he's talking about horror movies, I like to hear what he's saying. I usually don't agree with it, but everybody's got their opinions.
Now, we've digressed from stage fright, but there were 2 points I wanted to make. One you brought up was the Alfred Hitchcock TV show, which is on now. I think it's on one of those, not AMC, but one of those channels in the 200s. Every night you can see Alfred Hitchcock shows, and they've got all these famous people starring in them. So he did keep these plot things going. It's kind of like in the 30s and 40s, he had the serial movie, right? And then he turned it into a shorter TV show.
Yeah, when you think about it, this was a major Hollywood director. And in the late 50s, he was not in decline. I mean, that's when Vertigo and Rear Window and North by Northwest came out, and Psycho came out, all during the time that he had an active TV show. And some of the episodes he was basically did the introductions for, and not much more. But a lot of the episodes he directed them. He had a real hand in them.
Whoa!
And when have we seen that otherwise? I mean, you don't have that, a major director actually having a major hit on television. And that show was on for a long time. Let's see, I think the Hitchcock show came on in 55, and I think the half-hour show ended in 61, and then I think it came back for an hour-long show. And it's one of the few shows that successfully transitioned from a half-hour to an hour. God knows Twilight Zone didn't do it. And it lasted another 4. I'm looking up now. I think it lasted another 4 seasons as a 1-hour show. So I'll make a statement. It may not be true, but it is. It may be the most successful half-hour show that transformed itself into a 1-hour show.
Now that's interesting, because we're the most successful 1-hour public access show that never had a 30-minute show.
really,
Okay, but when times get tough, you may have to retreat there.
True words were never spoken. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun. Stage Fright is going to be on Friday night here, June 8th at 9 p.m. We're talking Hitchcock. We're talking how Frank Dello Stritto's contemporaneous reviews, contemporaneous for this century, will be appreciated thousands of years from now in
That's
little
right.
time capsules on
Yeah,
planet
yeah.
Mars.
Oh,
You know.
well, I don't know.
Well, see, I think something's happening, Frank. I think back in the 60s when I met Hitchcock, I had, a still camera.
Mm-hmm.
Not the video I have now when I taped Bobby Hebb and, Jodie Foster. So we're transitioning into this whole other cyber world where this stuff goes up there. I think Google has everything. Even stuff they say is deleted, come on. Mm-hmm. They have got a library of the world. They're creating a second Library of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
But let me ask you, Joe, on the outside chance my stuff survives.
Yep.
In 100 years, won't there be so damn much on the internet that nobody will be able to find anything except by accident?
No, I think people are already hunting the nooks and the crannies of the internet. Do you know what BitTorrent is?
BitTorrent? No.
BIT, capital T, ORRENT. BitTorrent on the internet. These are the nooks and crannies. It's file sharing, and people are finding elegant Ed Sullivan shows that aren't out yet. And these fans have space on their own home computers and servers, and they share them. So I've been to a film director's house where he has shown me stuff that's been missing in action for decades. And these fans have it on BitTorrent. So they're in nooks and crannies on the internet. When you've got 6.5 billion people on a planet, and more than half of them tune into the internet, Frank, they are gold digging every day.
All right, so somebody will find us in 100 years and say, gee, those guys really knew what they were doing.
Well, just the fact that we've interviewed about 700 guests here. I've interviewed over 1,000 people between the magazine, the radio show, and the TV show. We have content. And somewhere in that content, you know, I went to interview John Sebastian of the Love and Spoonful. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to grant an interview. He was in cranky mood, whatever he was in that day. But I got Fritz Richmond. Fritz Richmond's an important Boston figure and international figure, playing washboard and all sorts of eclectic stuff. Fritz passed away a few years back. I have a wonderful 15-minute interview with Fritz Richmond, which to me is very, very valuable. And to the people out there that know of him and his importance, he did a lot of session work for a lot of musicians. So this show has captured fly on the wall. We've got an hour with Barbara Harris of the Toys in New York at a restaurant. And a friend of mine said, the beauty of your show is it's real reality TV. You're talking to legends at a dinner table. And it's really true. That's why this show is popular. And I think what we're doing, Frank, is going to be very popular down the road.
All right.
Because people love movies.
Joe, you've made me an immortal.
All right, now there's a second point I wanted to make about movies. You said about these copyrights and how the movies abandon them. Isn't it intriguing how David Bowie and the Rolling Stones moved their copyrights from one major company to another, getting millions of dollars? They understand the value. I can't believe that these film directors did not understand the value of even Hitchcock, his own personal library.
Well, I mean, movies can fall into the public domain for a whole variety of reasons. I don't know if he owned this movie. I don't know. Or for instance, he might have sold his ownership in the movie.
Okay.
Like David O. Selznick made Gone with the Wind, but he sold his ownership early on. So when when all the revivals and the DVDs and all that, neither Selznick nor his estate got a dime off that because he had sold it. So you gotta track these things or whatever. So I don't know why this movie fell into the public domain. But I mean, there was a time when you had to renew copyrights, and that cost money. And there wasn't until the age of TV. A movie after its initial release was not considered a real asset. I mean, some movies would be re-released and et cetera. But when it came up time to renew their copyrights, the businessmen in charge had to say, "Is this a good business decision? I don't know how much it costs to renew a copyright. $1,000. Do I want to spend $1,000?
No, it would always be the same, $25.
Yeah,
or $10, or
whatever it is. But then if you suppose you're Ted Turner 50 years ago, and all of a sudden 300 movies come up for renewal the same day, and you're a little short of cash that day.
Well, 300 movies times $10, even for $3,000 in those days. I'm sorry, you have made investments of millions of dollars in those days, which is huge.
Yeah, but if you talk to independent producers that used to work with the major studios could be easily negotiated out of their residual rights because they didn't see any great value to it.
Wow.
And that is something else that's happening about 1950, because television is growing, and all of a sudden, these films that are sitting in the vault, and by the way, in addition to the renewal fee, it costs money to preserve a film. These things have to be kept in the right temperatures and all that, which is why some films have survived, but just barely. And somebody has to bear that expense. But then television comes along, and all of a sudden these studios are seeing their warehouses become their libraries. For instance, Columbia Pictures realized early on that movies would have a second life in television. They set up screen gems, and they bought the rights to the Universal horror movies. So when the Universal horror movies came on in the 1950s, they weren't released by Universal, they were released by Columbia. And then when that contract ran out, Universal snapped them all back.
They realized.
no interest in renewing. But when the first big surge in the movies that the classic horror movies that I love came not from the company that made them, but the company that leased them. And Richard, we mentioned Richard Gordon on this program once. He's an independent producer that passed away about a year ago. And one of the reasons he got out of independent production as part of his negotiation was always to get the residual rights to the film. And he said that, as the years went on, he was still being able to do it in the 60s, but as the 60s went on, he just couldn't get it. The studios wanted to hold it. And now with home video and et cetera, every time a new media comes out, it's a new market for these old films.
And there will continue to be new media beyond YouTube. They might have glasses you buy that have 10,000 movies loaded in them. Mm-hmm. And you walk around, like a zombie. You think texting and driving is bad. What about watching movies while driving?
It's coming. It's coming. They're doing all kinds of...
But you know what, Frank? I think it's going to inevitably come back to the film house. People want to go out to a movie for a night's entertainment to get out of their cocoon and have a different environment. And I think the movie theater is going to survive centuries.
Well, I do. I agree with you, but there's one if I'd put in there. I do. My generation does. The younger generation, I don't know. They're used to a whole different style.
They want the holodeck. They want to go to the Star Trek holodeck and actually be in the movie, and you can pick the role you play.
All right. Well, then it's going to be some really crummy acting in the future movie.
Well, no, because you basically, your consciousness goes into the character, and it's already what was pre-planned in that movie. Of course, there'll be alternate takes, because when they have these things in, about the, what do they call it, the supercomputers. Mm-hmm. They say that within 100 years, maybe within 50 years, the supercomputers are going to be so powerful that a virtual reality is a guaranteed thing. Mm-hmm. So that one scientist said the chances we're living in a virtual reality right now are about 95%.
All right.
Because our supercomputers, we're on the verge of that. Mm-hmm. So anything,
So would you say that the movie houses will change the screens, and the people will still go to them, but they'll be very different?
I can't say. Mm-hmm. I never would have predicted the internet. But I would think that people want exercise and they want their bodies moving, so they're not going to just sit in a cocoon like it's like some heroin addict, going off in La La Land. I think people are going to want to be mobile and live life. But they'll go into these holograms and be in a Hitchcock film with Frank Dello.
Now, see, that would make it interesting for the younger generation.
Frank will be doing the narrative over the movie, so he won't be in the movie. He's going to be doing the narratives.
Okay, and then if I'm in the movie, I won't be able to see it, because I always feel like a fool when I see or hear myself.
Yeah, but John Forsythe didn't feel that way, and you're the John Forsythe of visual radio.
Did John Forsythe ever listen to himself?
I don't know. This is Charlie's Angels, right? And
yeah, okay.
Yeah, it does. It reminds me of Charlie's Angels.
Well, that's we got John Forsythe here. He's
right.
He's manipulating what I say.
Charlie.
I think he's gone, but
he is.
According to you can bring him back anyway.
Yep. Anything else on Stage Fright?
One thing, a few years, Marlene Dietrich's career as an actress, a film actress, I should say, is almost over. You can probably count on both hands the movies she will make for the rest of her life. But one of them is, when you read the plot summary, you read a one-paragraph plot summary, it has the same plot as this movie, and that is Stage Fright and Witness for the Prosecution.
Whoa.
Which is when you read it, you say, God, is it the same plot? And it's not when you watch it, but it's a very similar movie. She has almost the same kind of role. And so I found that interesting. Jane Wyman was probably at her peak as an actress. She had won an Oscar 2 years earlier. And she had kind of a sharp arc. Television brought her back on Falcon's Crest, but she was, her film career didn't really take off. She had a niche and she was good in it, but that niche didn't last her long.
But she's Spock's mother, correct? Jane Wyman?
That's Jane Wyatt, isn't it?
Oh, I'm not sure. Okay. Probably right.
I think it's Jane Wyatt.
I'll have to look that up.
I know I'm going to lose a lot of any fans you have when I say this, but I was never a Trekkie. I've watched some shows. I can't recite the chapter and verse the way so many people can.
And I think Trekkie, and you heard me quote a little earlier, good old-fashioned hatred. How refreshing. That's verbatim. I like the word Trekkie. The Trekkers want to be called Trekkers. Why not be a Trekkie? Mm-hmm. They take an affront to being called Trekker or Trekkie.
Well,
Oh, I like being
in that
called
case, I've affronted your listeners, but that's life. You can't choose the name that people call you. They're going to call you no matter what. Just give up and go with the flow.
Early for dinner. Hey, Frank, unless you've got anything else to say on this, it's been a great session here today.
Okay, I got one other thing to say. The first Robin Hood I remember was Richard Todd, who played Robin Hood in a Disney movie. And I saw all the Disney movies when I was a kid, and Richard Todd is the prime suspect in this movie, so he too is at his peak. He's a British actor that became known to Americans, but to me, he is the first Robin Hood I ever knew.
Excellent.
And Joe, I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, and what's the young lady's name that's there?
Jeanne.
Jeanne, thank you for being there too.
Oh,
Jeanne Martin.
you're welcome. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
And movies, talking movies.
Yeah.
Isn't it a great component of this?
Unbelievable. The movies from the 30s and 40s, there's nothing like them.
Now, most public access stations have a movie night. In Medford, Dr. Raby's, Arthur DeLuca, who's on the board of directors, he had Dr. Raby's Mad Movie, something museum, sanatorium or something. He stopped doing them. But he'd go out and wear a crazy wig, and then he would do it. Now TV3 has just some similar show to what we're doing, but they import it from another station. But there's lots of public access stations playing public domain movies, movies that do not have copyright, so they're fair game.
Oh, okay.
And for viewers out there, you can go to archive.org, which I believe is part of Amazon. And archive.org has free movies. You can get the free Perry Mason radio shows,
Oh, really?
and they're public domain. So there were a lot of radio shows of Perry Mason prior to the TV show. And these are all free up there because they're public domain, which is why we air. Anthony finds the movies, and we air them, and Frank talks about them. People will always have interest, and this guy's a published author. He's got 2 books, working on his 3rd. They're excellent books on classic horror films, and one on Bela Lugosi. But Bela Lugosi's in the classic movie book that he sent me years ago, and that's how I met him. He sent me the book. I don't know if I contacted him, he contacted me, whatever. But I had a magazine when I was 15 years old. So when I was 18, the magazine, I went to see Alfred Hitchcock.
So you're saying that Alfred Hitchcock's movies are part of this public domain now?
Some of them.
Some of them.
Yeah, you can go to Stop and Shop, and they might have a big bin full of movies. There's a company I'm going to contact because I have one of the Hitchcock ones, I think. No, I didn't get Hitchcock. I got the Bela Lugosi series. It's like a tin can, which in and of itself must be collectible. Or you can go to the Meadow Glen Mall, and there's that dollar store. For $1, you can pick up 2 public domain movies on a disc.
Really? Okay.
So I have stacks of them. And VHS tape you can get for free at libraries. They're just giving them away because no one wants them. I've got the tons in storage. People just gave me tons of VHS tape. No one wants them, and they're in nice cases with nice collectible artwork, and you know what? They'll be valuable at some point. See, the key is 6.5 million people. People are collecting 8-track tapes.
Oh, my God.
You can go to In Your Ear Records in Cambridge, Boston, and Rhode Island, but I prefer the one near the Paradise in Boston. And see Reed, R-E-E-D, and Reed is like the great place to go for 8-track tapes. So 8-track collectors go to his store. And you get vinyl. Dare I even tell the secret? You can get vinyl. He was selling them for $10. You get $10, 20 records, and $20 you can get 100 records. Just pick up 100 albums for $20.
Wow.
It's amazing. So I go there and...
Do you think those vinyl, even if they're odd music, not Aerosmith or anything, but if they're some no-name...
I'm a collector. Oh, yeah. So I go looking for this no-name stuff.
Really?
I might see a 5-record classical music set, and I'll pick it up and say, wow, this is important music, which probably costs $50,000 to make, at least. Just paying the musicians. Not only in the recording and the packaging is gorgeous. And if I find it cheap for like $1, I buy it. Just because I think it's precious. I hate to see people throw this stuff away. To me, this is art. And I have this show is art. This is my art. This is my canvas. I used to make records. I still make records. But I make more TV than I make records. I love making records.
Do you?
Oh yeah, that's. I think the greatest gift God gave me was to go in the studio and make a record. That's what I do best.
Really? I think you're a natural at this.
Well, I've been doing this forever. And this is the same thing. You know, I'm making records in 1986. I'm in Los Angeles. And this woman who had done Joe Walsh of the Eagles, she has done his photography. I see her in the office of Music Connection. Now, this is very strange. This is Los Angeles, so everything's changed. I'd never been before 86. And I fly in with Jimmy Miller, the Rolling Stones producer. So I'm dead tired from the jet lag. And we're at the Chateau Marmont, which is in Myra Breckinridge, the movie.
Oh, really?
Raquel Welch is at Chateau Marmont. She's the sex change from Myron to Myra. And she's at the Chateau Marmont. Well, Chateau Marmont is where John Belushi died in one of the bungalows.
Ouch.
A woman from Canada gave him a hot shot. She sold the story to the National Enquirer. They put a warrant out for her because she admitted to complicity in the death of John Belushi, and she did a little time or something for that, okay? So back in '83, my friend Jimmy Miller, the Rolling Stones producer, was with Spencer Davis Group. Spencer Davis was then A&R for a label, Tacoma Records out in California. So they went, and Jimmy goes, well, we have to stay at the Chateau Marmont. And they said, well, there's this bungalow. No one will rent it. It was where John Belushi died. Jimmy said, you're kidding, I'll stay there. And so he was the first, and he's a major name, a producer. He stated, they put that in the press release for Tacoma Records. Jimmy was the first guest to stay at John Belushi's bungalow since Belushi. But, you know, fun trivia. So we're at the Chateau Marmont, and Jimmy goes, we got to have dinner. I said, I'm tired, I got to sleep. So I had my own room, and I had the papers everywhere, you know, for all our work the next day in Los Angeles. Jimmy goes, he calls up on the phone, we must go to dinner now. So we go across the street to Carlos and Charlie's. It's a little restaurant. You know, some days Paula Prentice and her husband, Bob Prentice, whatever their name is, Bob, what's his name, and Paula Prentice, they had a TV show. They're sitting like across from you. And then there was that little guy, Hugo, what's his name? DePlane, boss, DePlane.
Oh, him, he was funny.
We're at it's like a dream. I'm at the Chateau Marmont in 1986 with the Rolling Stones producer, and he goes, and we're having nachos, and there's like, DePlane, boss, DePlane, sitting diagonal from me. It's just, Jojo Lane said to me, it's a magical land. A magical land. So we rented a convertible, and we're going down Sunset Strip, and there's Jojo with Jimmy, and Jimmy had his silver hair like Kenny Rogers, prematurely gray. He was like 45 at the time. I'm like 33, 32. And Jojo Lane's in the front seat with her beautiful red hair. And so I'm like bored, but we get the top down. So I start putting her clothes on.
No.
And then I start sitting on the back of the convertible wearing Jojo Lane's clothes on Sunset Strip. And they took pictures. We got pictures. Or I got pictures of them. Well, but people were like waving. It was great. It was
Don't let him get bored, people.
Jimmy and Jojo and Joe hit L.A. It descended from there. We had fun.
I know.
But I brought this up because of Chateau Marmont. I forgot.
The bungalow.
The bungalow. So
someone finally slept there.
Well, we made records, and we were going to L.A. to sell our wares, and we had some great product. Great product, but it's very difficult selling to these record labels because, you know, if you're the A&R person, you might say, oh, this is Stone's producer, his new work. But, you know, unknown band, I'm getting 80 grand a year. If I risk double my salary on their record, I'm out of a salary if it doesn't fly. And that's the game. So it was cheaper to say no. And so you get the band Boston got 1 million rejections.
Really?
The song Sunny got 45 rejections before it was picked up by a publisher. And then it came out twice, and then Bobby Hebb's version was a year later, and it went to #1 in Cashbox, #2 in Billboard, and is now recorded by 1,000 people. So how can you have Frank Sinatra covering Sunny and all these publishers and record labels rejecting it? They don't know. Me, I hear something that's great, I want to sign it. Give me Bill Gates' money, and we'll have an art gallery. Superb art gallery. Art gets the back seat.
It does.
Art gets the back seat. I'm amazed some of this artists survived, knowing you know how close Star Wars and The Matrix came to not being made. Well, The Matrix actually, they were unknown, but they gave them a little money, 7-8 million, to do a movie, and they liked it. So then they gave them a lot of money to do The Matrix. So maybe The Matrix not so much, but Star Wars.
Star Wars, I'm sure. That was like new territory.
New territory, groundbreaking.
Completely groundbreaking.
And the film company freaking out because he's way over budget. But look what he did for the day.
Oh, phenomenal. The response to that movie was unbelievable.
How can you make 3 superbly filmed prequels and have such terrible scripts? Like the you know,
Yeah, I
the
didn't like
Phantom
that.
Menace and all that.
I didn't care for the prequels, but
But you go to see them in
the original and the one that followed, Empire Strikes Back, was phenomenal. I mean, they were just...
yeah, in The Return of the Jedi. They must have had screenings of them back to back to back, just to see that one continuous story. But George Lucas didn't reinvent the wheel. He saw the 40s movies like Flash Gordon and Batman. The early Batmans are really well done for the day. 1943.
I grew up with the show on TV.
Right, most of us did. I did
Yeah.
too. But then you can go back now on DVD and explore the original Batmans.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that even existed.
I think they paid 25 cents to go to the movie theaters, and along with the top attraction, if it was Stage Fright, you might get Batman serial cliffhanger, so you'd see like 5 minutes of Batman. But every week you'd have to come back. So it'd be a cliffhanger.
Yeah, for like 6 episodes or something.
9, 12,
Yeah.
there was a series in 43, another one in 49. The original Batman is the father of the fellow who wrote and still is in the producer of majority of the James Bond movies.
Oh, really?
I put that in my review.
Wow.
So, because people don't know this, that, you know, the original Batman carries on in the day with this 007 thing, his son. Because the wife married Broccoli or Saltzman, probably Broccoli from the 007, and the stepson became the producer, and his sister, the producer and co-writer. He wrote a lot of these movies. I would think at least the one with Christopher Walken, and I think it was around that time. But I think it continues to this day, Michael something or other. So do you think you'd be talking movies today?
No, but that's okay.
Yeah, we have 23 minutes left. I get
Oh, wonderful.
AARP magazine, that's how old I am.
Yeah.
Better Brain, Happier Life. So who's on the Denzel Washington, Viggo Mortensen, and John Bon Jovi, the 21 hottest guys on the planet. Now, this is for older people. J.D. Ewing and Dallas are back. This is AARP magazine, people. When you're no longer 18, hanging out with Alfred Hitchcock, when it's 40 years later, it's 40 years since I met Alfred. I'm 58.
Wow.
I don't look a day over 55.
That's right, you don't.
If I get a haircut, I'll look 53.
That's true. And a
it's-
shave.
You know, the silver, I'll get my shave tomorrow. There's a barber that great shaves. So, because if I get lazy and I don't shave, then I'll go to the barber shop and they shave. So headlines, Jeanne, headlines. Oh, you're in the Patch. So
Yes. Can I
this
talk
is
about
absolutely
that?
free, people. Go to the Patch,
That's right.
medford.patch.com, and you'll see my blog on something or other. Freedom of Information Act. And Jeanne's new blog today.
Yes. Can I talk about that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Through some encouragement, I completed my first blog in Medford, and it was about the police station, and we need desperately to build a new police station in our city. We have a city of 56,000 people. The police station was built in 1962, I want to say. It is designed for the 20th century. We no longer just have community policing, to the extent of pulling over somebody who's intoxicated and putting them in the tank for the night. Policing is now a complex occupation. The prison population is much more complex. The role of the policeman or woman is more complex. So I am an advocate and proponent for building a new 21st century police station in Medford, and of course this would cost a lot of money, and so that's why it receives so much resistance. but you cannot put a dollar amount on public safety. It is the first line of defense in not having people take the law into their own hands. And I am also an advocate and proponent of increasing the number of police officers. We have now approximately 8 or 9 female officers. They need when it was built, when the old building was built, it was not built for female officers at all. So there is no gender equity inside the building. But in all fairness, the male officers have a lot of complaints about how run down the building is for their weightlifting rooms and whatnot too. I would like to see a full-scale new police station with a shooting range, complete with at least 4 cells. We have 56,000, I know you live in Winchester, and it's probably about 9,000.
I'd say 17,000 people, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
gonna look that
17,000.
up.
Yeah, look that up. But we have a diverse population. We're about 4 to 7 miles from Boston. We have the orange line comes in. We're having the green line come in. Our minority populations have increased, pretty much doubled in the last 10 years. I looked at the U.S. Census Bureau for Medford, and if you care to look at home, you put in U.S. Census, Medford, Mass, and you go in 2000 to 2010, we've basically doubled all minorities. We have 8.8% black now. We have Hispanic is up to, I want to say, 6 point something. Asians are up as well. And people who claim 2 races or more is 2.7%. Also, I found out through the census information that only 61% of Medford people own their homes. We have a lot of 2-family houses. We have a lot of apartment houses, apartment buildings. We have a lot of renters. Renters don't tend to feel as confident coming forward and participating in the public square because they, as I've talked to people who do rent, say, we just rent. And they don't know if they get politically active, if that's going to affect their landlord or whatever, and they don't know. I mean, if I had a tenant and my tenant disagreed with me, I have the power to say next year when the lease is up to ask you to leave. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm saying that it could possibly happen. So those that own homes, which are only 61% of the population, must speak up even more and allow the people that rent and that do come in. We have a high student turnover population around Tufts. We need to have a diverse police department. Currently, we do not have the minority police numbers.
We don't have the minority anything in Medford.
Right, well, that's true too. I mean, the city council's completely white.
With one woman.
With one woman.
The school committees.
School committee's all white.
With 3 women?
3 women. 3 women.
Did Benedetto, Cunyo,
Yes.
and Vanderkloot.
Yes.
Is there anyone else from there?
No, that's it, 3 women.
Are there 8, 9 people on it? 7?
7, I believe. The mayor is the chairman.
And then there's Roy Belson's always there.
Yes.
Roy Belson, who is the first cousin of our guest, Norman Greenbaum, Spirit in the Sky. Mm-hmm. People don't know that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Norman, the Spirit in the Sky, Roy Belson grew up with Norman Greenbaum, one of our guests.
So I'm a proponent of having a new station built. I think it's very important that the people that live in Medford get behind it. The new station, as well as increasing the police officers by 12. I would like to see veterans, as well as 6 new black officers, 3 Hispanic, preferably one with, we have a large Brazilian population in South Medford, and I would like to see someone that has Portuguese skills and
very important to have people multilingual. Just if for no other reason than to be able to speak the language of anyone that you're pulling over. because that language barrier is Tower of Babel, and you're going to have problems. You got to have that language
Right.
understanding. You know, I'm going to start something right here, which I've been planning on the blogs, okay? On my blog today, I have our goal, 150 attendees of the Medford City Council.
Wow.
A target.
Wow.
And if we get 25 or 30, I'll be happy. Because right now we have an active group, but, you know, and this is the same for Winchester at the town hall. Public participation is nil. There's apathy in our country
That's
that
very
only
true.
the fringe groups, NAACP, gay rights, it's the smaller groups that are bubbling because they're being discriminated against. And then, you know, there's the backlash of, oh, you're not, we love everyone. Well, no, you don't when there's not equality in pay, equality in jobs, and even having people in public service that know different languages. You know, so by our activism, now we were on one subject, which was cleaning up the public access station in Medford. Now it's gotten to a much bigger thing after the Medford Housing. I think the Medford Housing brought everything to the front page of the Globe, and people started to realize, whoa, these people weren't crazy. There's stuff that's very not balanced. There needs to be some balance. And, you know, at 5:30 today, these people will be watching this at 8:30 tonight, 8 o'clock tonight, but 5:30
Thank you for
today.
watching. Yes.
Thank you for watching. Yeah, June 7th, Mayor McGlynn is across the street from my house, cutting a ribbon. I will have flyers that say, instead of cutting the ribbon, I would like you to address the Judge Jackson report that cost taxpayers $3,900. I want you to address the audit by Melanson and Heath, which cost taxpayers $10,000. There's $14,000 that you need to address before you cut that ribbon. Because that's real money.
That is real
What could
money.
you do with 14 grand today?
Oh, my goodness.
You know,
yes.
buy a camera. They're
Yes,
worth
we
about
could buy
10
a
15
camera.
grand.
Well, that's another whole subject about the TV access and channel 15 and 16 and.
Right, the whole thing.
We need to use the resources we have, and this is probably true for Winchester as it is for Medford. We need to use the resources we have, and we are, and I say resources as in the human resources. Well, I am only one voice in 56,000 people, and there are, in my words, 56,000 resources that
And
are
the nice thing
untapped,
about-
that are untapped in Medford.
The nice thing about you and me and other voices, because we have larger voices, we're up there. We're basically saying we only have larger voices because there's not enough of you coming forward.
Exactly. I would have a smaller voice if others would come forward.
You're in the patch today, you're up at the city council, everyone knows who we are. You walk down the street.
That's true.
My producer from Haverhill goes, they all know you when you walk in Dunkin'. I said, I know. And I walk into the food court and people pull me aside and start talking about Comcast and Verizon. And people are watching the government channel. The mayor realizes it. That's why there's like, the replays are hard to find. But just being on that one spin, there are
Right.
thousands of people watching.
Right. Oh, yes. A lot of people watch it from home. But we need to get them to step forward. We need to use community policing. We need to use neighborhood watches. But we need to get, I do it in my street. I'm the unofficial mayor of my street. I get out, I meet my neighbors, I introduce myself to them as they move into the neighborhood, and I have the barter system. I'll help them do something, they help me do something. We're going to have to resort to these kinds of, this whole new way of life and a way of thinking, because the government can't do everything for us.
No, and the
you know?
litter around Medford is ridiculous. It's at you know, this mayor gave us these green things, okay? Were I mayor, I would be saying, okay, everyone, you've got these green receptacles, and maybe I should have had some input, but I made the decision. Now I want the community to help beautify Medford. Pick up all the plastic, put it in the recycling. You know, I do that at the bus stop around the corner from my house. It's a pigsty. I can complain at the city council, but you know, maybe by being proactive and being the first guy, put on some rubber gloves, they're cheap to buy, pick up this garbage, put it away, and then maybe put a little sign down there and say, you know, I'll remove this sign when you keep people remove the litter. But just by taking care of our own little patch of the neighborhood,
Exactly.
you take care of your end, I
That's
take
right.
care of mine, it's contagious.
It is contagious, and it does. It makes a difference. The cleaner I keep my yard, the more I influence other people to keep their yards clean.
Yep.
It definitely, and there's a guy, I wish I had his grass. I mean, there is one guy, he has golf course grass, and
But not
he
everyone
puts
has
me-
the time.
He puts me to shame.
Not everyone has the time to work on their lawn.
That's right.
Winchester has beautiful lawns and beautiful homes. Why shouldn't Medford aspire to be adjacent to Winchester just as beautiful? Mm-hmm. You know, you shouldn't go by the city limits and all of a sudden it's a dump. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that Medford's a dump once you go through the city limits, but as you get into the heart of Medford,
Medford Square is congested. There are many issues with Medford, as is, I'm sure, with Winchester.
but I'm giving a 10-minute speech on Tuesday night.
Oh, good. On
I'm
what?
giving a 10-minute speech on activism,
Good.
bringing people to the city council. I'm
Good.
going to challenge my neighbors to come to the city council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're tired of hearing me speak, and we know the council president certainly is, and I'll say that,
That is so true.
then, you know, I don't want to be the voice up here every week. I got my own TV show. I don't need to be at the city council.
Right.
But I'll leave the city council when my colleagues and my comrades, is that a good word? Yes. My comrades.
Your comrades, your,
And
well,
my
I don't know,
neighbors.
that's social, people.
I'm being funny.
Yeah, okay, all
I
right.
intentionally said
Your neighbors, I like the
my
term
neighbors, the
My neighbors.
residents of Medford and Winchester. And Winchester people, you're all invited to the city council. Jeanne is there, I'm there, Anthony D'Antonio, one of our guests is there, Dr. Wood, Carolyn Rosen, Johnny Byers. You can meet the whole staff of Visual Radio
That's right.
at the city council on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. Come on down.
That's
Come on down.
And if you have any relatives that might live in Medford, you know, just tell them to come on down.
Because I want to see 50, 75 people. What happened, Jeanne, when 150 minority people were flowing outside the door over the
Right.
Chevalier Theater?
Right. It got front page transcript.
And speaking of transcript, how about transparency? I'm putting in the blog, in the patch blog, on medford.patch.com, what I'm doing Tuesday night. So Bob, my uncle, can read it, and he can slam his gavel all he wants, but he's not going to shut me up because it'll be there in black and white. And my agenda. And it's going to be very simple, and there's no reason for him to slam the gavel at all. He's going to have to sit there and listen to me because it's all about community. And the last thing that he wants to see is 150 people there every week. And 7-8 hour council meetings. And people complaining about this street and that street. But you know what? It's all right.
Right, it's all right. But I would love to promote activism on the part of our neighbors. You know, that's the key.
Anything, community watch, there's been break-ins.
Community watch.
There's been break-ins in Medford.
Right.
Okay, people got cameras in the windows, there's not going to be any break-ins. And if we start teaching them to put cameras in their windows, there's not going to be any break-ins or people sitting across the street from you casing your house. You know, it's a camera age. These people that...
We're on camera everywhere we go.
Yeah, so these people that think they can walk onto my porch and start opening my window, which happened.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, and we heard a noise, and I went out there barefoot. And there were 3 guys, and they were across the street, and they had their hoods up. And I went over, and a police officer the next day said, please don't do that, please call us. I said, I don't want to bother you guys. He goes, something could have happened to you. But I went over and I said, I know your face. They bolted down Almont. They bolted. But I said, I know your face, and you were on my porch. I figure, nip it in the bud.
Exactly.
Could have been shot on the spot, but
That's true.
knifed, a bottle over my head. But you know what?
Yep,
I think I'm showing strength by not being afraid.
that's right.
And you see what cowards they were? They ran. Could have been just looking around, it was dumb, I'm a little drunk. Come up with an excuse, just be sorry, apologize to me, and never do it again. But no, they ran like cowards. And the next day I told an officer when I saw him at the store where I bought the paper today, and he goes, don't do that. Please call
Well,
us."
yeah, actually, yeah, we shouldn't be, it can be,
Call the cops and they're going to be gone because even if they're coming down from Salem Street, within 30 seconds those guys are going to fly, But I don't want to bother the police all the time.
right.
They got other things to do. They got people, I don't know. That was my take on it. Everyone's going to react differently.
Exactly. But we don't want people taking the law into their own hands, which is
No,
another...
I'm not going to do
No,
that.
no, not you.
If they punched me,
But, no, right.
then I call
you
the
have-
cops.
No, but then you have the right to defend yourself. But,
Didn't think of that.
no, you do, absolutely. That's a whole different topic. But like the parking program, we need to have a separate, thank you for letting me talk about the issues in Medford on your TV show. We don't have any paid parking in Medford and in public squares, or we have permit parking, but no one.
You know, I don't mind
enforce
the
it.
not paid, because in Winchester, they have 2 guys that go around ticketing.
Right.
You get 2 hours. I like not having the quarter in the machine.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're there beyond 2 hours, ticket them.
Right, exactly. They should have signs up that say 2-hour parking only.
If I can-
But we need a separate,
Yeah, we do.
while
need
I'm a
separate.
proponent of new officers, I do not want to waste the talent of officers. It's a new world, and it's not just walking around saying, hey, Joey, get out of the car and, give me your six-pack. Those days are gone. Police have to be much more aware of all kinds of dynamics, and it's a profession today. It's not as easy as it used to be, and they need to be educated, and they need to be highly trained in how to stop people from escalating and whatnot. So to have them out there filling out tickets is a waste of their time.
Absolutely a waste of resources.
It is, it's a waste of resources. I believe that we should have a separate, maybe 10-member meter-maid outfit that is separate from the, under the police
Yeah, and in
authority.
Winchester, they have 2.
There's
But
two-
there's only
well,
17,000
Winchester's
or so
smaller,
people here, right.
So if we had 10 or 15 or 20
You'd need them,
meter
wouldn't
maids.
you?
You would, if they were
Say
to go-
15,
Yeah,
16.
15. At least for all of the square areas, we have the South Medford.
Haynes and-
We have the Medford Square is a disaster. You can't get through there. People don't go through there. They just don't, because you're going to be parked in, it's where all these different main highways come together.
We've got 3 minutes left.
Oh, well, thank you very much for listening to me.
You know what I want to say? How many generations do you think you, Jeanne Martin, go back?
What do you mean, in this
How-
country?
No. How many generations do you think I go back of, like, I did a little math while we were sitting here, okay?
I
And
go
if you
back 14.
Do you?
My people do, 14. I'm French-Canadian, and I have the genealogies on both sides of my family.
And do you know how many people how many people it takes to make 14 generations of people?
Well, I assume 14.
16,384.
How'd you get that?
2 parents.
Yeah,
4 grandparents, second generation.
okay,
8 great-grandparents, third generation.
okay.
16 great-great-grandparents.
Wow,
32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1,024, 2,048, 4,096, 8,192, 16,384, if my math is correct.
okay.
But it takes a lot of people to make me. A lot of hot Italian blood in there. People don't think that we're all brothers. We're all related. We're all cousins.
Yes, we are.
And we are a species that shouldn't need an alien invasion to bring us all together.
Where did that come from?
Science fiction, when there's an alien invasion, the Earth unites.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's how
All
you
right.
get everyone to be on the same page instead of
You're
fighting.
on, you're in Will Smith territory, okay.
Yeah, Will Smith has become one of the great science fiction actors of our age. It would never have happened 30 years ago. He wouldn't have, a major A-list star would not have made so many science fiction movies. It was anathema to their agents. You can't do that many science fiction movies. You'll be typecast. Well, he's a big, big star, and he's not typecast. We got 1 minute and 15 seconds left. So there's a lot of people it took to make up me and you. So we have a lot of, we're ambassadors for those 16,384 people who came behind us, good or bad. Their spirits live within us. I like to think that my wonderful Nana lives within me.
Absolutely she does. I believe a piece of everyone that's passed
Yeah.
lives inside of us.
And
My
so we have to
mother,
do
my
our
father.
best. And we all make mistakes, but we just do what's best and do what's right and do something to clean up our neighborhood. And that's what we're doing, cleaning up the neighborhood.
Exactly.
And Winchester, too. Hey, we've got 30 seconds left. Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
so
We had a
much.
fun date.
Yeah,
It's
was
kinda
just-
light.
Yeah.
light. But you want to see us feisty, get up to the City Council of Medford. And good luck tonight, because while this is airing, well, I don't know if this